If you've ever sat down to create content to promote your business, build your audience and authority, and had no idea what you were going to talk about, then this video is for you because I want to break down my content creation machine and/or process that I think will help you understand what it actually takes to constantly and consistently create content that attracts your ideal audience. Let's get it going. Welcome guys, Greg here, Alt Agency at altagency.com, and we train and coach agency owners, consultants, service providers on how to transition from selling their labor to getting paid for their knowledge, skills, and experience. And in this video, I want to really talk on a topic about content creation because I was having a conversation with some of our clients that are jumping into our foundations program. And one of the key pieces of client attraction is putting out content, strategic content that attracts your ideal prospect, that gets them raising hands to start conversations, because right now conversions happen in conversations. So our content needs to create conversations. But what I find is that if you're new to content creation, and just like when I was new to content creation, you know that you need to do it. So you put it on your calendar, like this is my marketing block, I'm going to create content, but you sit down and you have no idea what to talk about. You were hoping to churn out 10 pieces of content in that session, but because of the lack of preparedness, you are only really able to create one, which spin wheels into, you're always creating just to release the next one. And it's sort of this content creation hamster wheel. And it shouldn't be that difficult. And by the way, I went through this exact same process until I sort of codified it and realized that there are actually multiple phases and pieces of the process that allow me to sit down and churn out 4 new YouTube videos in less than 90 minutes because I'm planned. Now, if you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, we release a new video every single week. So go ahead, click that subscribe button and that notification bell. In order to create, we actually first need to consume. There's a lot of talk about don't be a consumer, be a creator. But the problem is, if you've ever heard the term what you put in is what you get out. Well, I feel like if you're not consuming good information, sometimes you don't have a lot of ideas when it comes to the actual production process. I actually believe it was Andrew Carnegie. He said, "A man's reading program should be as carefully planned as his daily diet, for that too is food, without which he cannot grow mentally." Think about just how you eat, right? What you put in. If you eat healthy food, you feel better, you have energy. If you eat garbage food, fast food all the time, you probably will feel sluggish. I think the same thing is true when it comes to our content creation process. So we need to have a content consumption methodology. And so on one part of the spectrum, like in our consumption phase, because it actually starts here, you have to have an intake process. So how are you consuming content? I read or aim to read at least 10 pages every single morning. So every morning I'm getting a little bit of information in and around content that inspires me, gets me motivated, that makes me want to create. For me, that's typically self-help or I'm learning a skill. So some sort of tactical, personal development, business related topic that I consume in the morning. But my content intake at night, because I don't want to be up at all hours of the day, or not being able to sleep thinking about business, the intake isn't necessarily self-help or business development type stuff. It's fiction or a movie, or I'm really big into mountain biking, so I'll check out some mountain biking videos or travel type content that kind of is not getting me thinking about business, thus preventing me from sleep. So the type of content you're consuming at what time of day is really important, but you want to have schedules for when you consume each type of content, if you will. So phase 1, step 1 is intake, right? Then as we're consuming this information, number 2 is, I'll just call it record. How do you record or capture the nuggets or the pieces of information that, give you what you want to talk about? So, if I'm reading a book on, sales, I might hear a story from the book and then have my own experience to then take that story or that framework or principle from the sales book and apply it to my own life experience. Now I have a topic that I can talk about. I need to capture that quote or capture that thing, the thing that I highlight. So this is why I personally love to read on Kindle, because it saves all of your highlights. So if I'm reading a book and there's something I want to talk about, I'll highlight it. Another amazing tool that I love that I now use is what's called Readwise. and it integrates with Notion, which if you've checked out the video on my channel about Notion. So any Kindle highlight actually automatically imports into Notion. And for every book, I have a different document, right? And so I'm reading Gary Vaynerchuk's book, 12 and a half, and anything I highlighted now comes in here. So after I'm done reading the book, I can come back here and flesh out ideas or reorganize things and make it really useful for when I want to go create content, which actually brings me to the next step, which is recall. We have our intake process. We are recording stuff, whether that be through highlights in Kindle that then get ported over to Readwise or Notion or in our Google Notes or Apple Notes. But then we need the ability to recall. Like if I want to go think about, hey, what were my biggest takeaways from Gary Vaynerchuk's book, 12 and a half? Well, I'll just need to go look at where I captured and recorded that information. That's step 3. This is all in that consumption phase. Here's how that comes into my creation phase. Well, now when I schedule time and or pick an environment where I'm going to create or plan content, I can, in that time block where, for example, I sit down to plan these 4 YouTube videos, I can say, hey, what are some topics I want to talk about? Oh, I want to talk about leadership. I've actually been reading this book about leadership from Gary Vaynerchuk. Let me pull back from Notion in this recall phase, and I can go look at really all of the things inside of all of the books that I've read related to leadership. Or I could be, thinking back on a couple books specifically where I had nuggets that I would want to reference. I can now go back and prepare in this time and environment process and find the info that I'm going to need when it comes time to actually create, which leads me to the next step. So that's step 4. Step 5 would be having a process to formulate the content. I have different frameworks that I use to frame up how I have this conversation with you in a YouTube video. And so I organize my notes that I had from my time and environment block. So I like to go to Starbucks when we weren't in a pandemic, and I'd plan a lot of this stuff. So I'd have a couple topics in mind. I'd go back and recall some of the notes around topics from books that I've read about that, and I'd flesh out my notes following a couple different frameworks. I've shared these frameworks with a lot of our clients so that they can kind of have plug and play templates to formulate their content. But once you have that, the last piece is the publish. Have a process for documenting all these things, putting together the notes like this, so that the last step is we actually publish it. We have a piece of our process where we know is about distribution and getting it out there. So we got to schedule it to our email list. We got to schedule it in YouTube. We want to write a couple tweets that are going to go out to promote back to it, whatever your distribution vehicle looks like. But there's a time for that. So really when we zoom out, right, sitting down to create content, if you don't have a plan, can probably be daunting because you're coming down thinking that you're really at step 6 and you're like, wait, what am I going to publish? What am I going to share? And it's because you skipped the first 5 steps. And if you have a steady routine of consuming, you'll then be able to create a whole lot more. And so once you start to look at both of these phases and the 6 steps total as a part of the consumption into creation transition, you'll realize that each one has its own time and you probably won't do them all in one sitting. So on certain days of the month, you might be doing the intake and the capturing and the planning. And then on other days, you're planning your notes. And then the next day, you're actually recording. That's how I look at it. I think there's really multiple systems and or processes that are a piece or a part of successfully creating content consistently week in and week out. I have yet to miss a week of YouTube videos in over like 3 or 4 years at this point, and very much has to do with having a system and a process for each of these distinct phases. So I hope you found this useful. By the way, if you're not in our free Facebook group and you're looking to productize your service, then check out the link below in the description. Hop on over to our free Facebook group because I do live trainings like this each and every week there as well. And I'd love to see you there.